going to start a new series of interviews relating to the broad topic of the relationship between the COVID-19 outbreak and the reaction of the economy, in particular the economy concerning the so-called digital markets and digital platforms, but not just this kind of players. We already made some interviews as Turin School of Regulation some months ago, exactly after the first explosion of the pandemic here in Italy. We concentrated on single and specific cases of startups and digital platforms, mainly locally based, to understand how they deal with the explosion of the pandemic. Today, we're going to try to enlarge and achieve a broader vision about what happened, thanks to the collaboration and contribution of Laura Orestano, who is the CEO of Socialfare, a startup accelerator operating in the city of Turin, so the same city of us as Turin School of Regulation. This is a meeting which is part of a broader project with the financial support of the local Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce of Turin, which is interested in understanding how different firms, companies, mainly in digital markets and in the world of startups, deal with the crisis. So thanks again, Laura Orestano, for being here with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay. So I would start directly with the first question in order to stimulate a little bit of debate and discussion between us. So we wanted to, as I said before, to enlarge the vision of what happened during these last months. So according to your experience and to what you could observe during these latest months, what happened in the whole context of platform-based and startups in general dealing with the issues of so-called social innovation, social impact, but not just that. And what kind of effects in particular did you observe, effects of course coming from the outbreak of the pandemic? And which effects did you observe also from a differentiated sectoral viewpoint? How did these effects vary across different economic sectors?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation again. Well, I'll try to be brief and quite clear. You will interrupt me if I'm getting too long. What did we observe? Well, first, let me make a premise. I run a social impact startup accelerator, one of the few in Italy, and the Center of Social Innovation, Socialfare, actually started that back in 2016. That has been growing a lot since then. And of course, we have seen, and this is my premise in terms of my partial answer to your question, we have seen also a growth in the so-called digital solutions. What does that mean? It means that more and more also the so-called social innovations that should or are trying to respond in an innovative way to the societal challenges are embedding technology and have a strong, I would say, presence, have acquired a strong presence via digital platforms. What has happened during the COVID time can be, I would say, summarized from two different aspects. What has happened inside the accelerator, so the way we had to work. And of course, that required to us an immediate switch on a digital platform. It's important to say that our acceleration program has a duration of 4 months and it's residential in Torino. So in our premises, it's actually a vis-a-vis acceleration program. So that required to us, of course, an immediate switch on a digital platform. We had to consider what kind of digital platform would better match our needs in terms of acceleration of impact startups. And that I have to say also with the respect of my team, and also I would say with recognizing their ability to switch very quickly on a digital platform, and I do not mean a Zoom platform or a Skype platform, but I mean actually a platform that can allow you with a quite, I would say, deep interaction and wide interaction, also in terms of tools. So we apply different tools in terms of business planning, design, service design, a workshop, creative workshops, and so on. And all that was very important to us to be continued on our digital system. On the other side, instead, what we have seen in terms of our users, or better, our beneficiaries, our startups, was that they continued to attend and to participate in the acceleration program very much with I would say, with lots of focus, not missing one module. So I would say that the consistency, but also the frequency of the work that we have done with the startups via the digital platform, which is an open source platform, by the way, did increase the level and the quality of the interaction. And that came to us really unexpected. On the other side, what we have seen in the general scenario of the startups that applied to our program, because meanwhile, during the COVID period, we had to run our program, but at the same time also to launch a new call in order to select the new batch of impact startups. Well, what we have seen, again, unexpectedly, is that the number of applications reached the highest number of applications we ever had. So getting up to 170 applications. Consider that we leave the call open for 1.5 months. So it's quite a short period of time to apply, and it's not an easy application that you have to fill in for the program, because we invest also in the companies, in the startups that we accelerate. We reached like a peak of application. What is the quality of these applications? Well, what we have seen is that the quality has increased, and that the digital, and I would say broadly, the technological DNA, I would call it this way, of the startups, even impact startups, has become more and more widespread. Meaning that the solutions that at the beginning of our experimentation, when we first launched the program, the acceleration program back in 2016, end of 2015, those solutions were mainly, I would say, a mix of digital, physical, or mainly, I would say, proximity services, not mediated by digital platforms. Now we see not only digital platforms that actually represent the space, I would say, topos on which to develop, or by which to develop the business proposal, but also the technology at large has become an intrinsic part of the business proposition. And I give you some examples if you want. A societal challenge to be solved is that, for example, of people living abroad or people in companies that need psychological support. We have accelerated recently a startup that is fully digital, only digital, that actually provides this kind of service to expatriate, to employees in different companies, to people connecting from home. What has happened is that people are approaching the psychological service of psychotherapy in, I would say, less intermediated way via the digital platform, according to times and hours and slots in which they feel more comfortable, and probably also in a kind of privacy which is different from that of a medical studio, medical practitioner visiting room. That came unexpectedly again to us, but we have observed that growth. One more thing that we, just another example that I can share with you is that of a startup, an impact startup that allows people to apply digitally, fully digitally, so as digitize completely, not only the process of application, but also the, I would say, the benefits that can come from the application to the so-called different bonus that the government has released in order to support families, in order to support schooling, in order to support, for example, the payment of power bills, electricity bills, or the so-called reddito di cittadinanza, now the citizenship income or subsidies. Well, what we have seen that via this platform, people apply more, but before that, people are more aware of the rights and benefits they are entitled to apply. So the digitalization also allowed people who were not aware, who did not know their rights, to get closer to this kind of inclusion. So in the end, what I'm saying and what I'm seeing is that the digital platforms, if directed, or I would say enclosed and developed with, and this is what I'm trying and what I'm up to, I mean, in my daily life, if targeted and developed intentionally for the common good, for something, for an innovation that is really relevant for the people, for the communities, while they represent a real important, I would say, not only tool, but also something that more and more becomes DNA of the new solutions, especially social innovation solutions. What instead we have seen on the other side is that even the cooperatives that have worked so strongly and so deeply in the emergency, and that were not equipped with a digital tool, and also with platforms that could be internal platforms for better efficiency and efficacy of their work, or external, open to their users, beneficiaries, for a better and prompt response. Well, those cooperatives and also third sector actors that were not endowed with digitalized tools remained behind. So in the first part of the pandemic, of course, there was a lot of, I would say, labor-intensive approach. Let's put people have to react. We help people, the community, the proximity has, of course, also to be linked via people who can tour, who can travel, who can actually get out of their homes. But at the same time, I would say that the critical mass has been supported mainly via digital platforms.
Okay, thanks a lot for your answer. You, in a way, during your answer, anticipated a little bit what we wanted to ask during the second questions, in the sense that we were also interested in understanding how all this situation, in a way, affected the way startup accelerators, for example, operate in their everyday life, selecting, for example, new emerging companies or working with them. So, for example, you said that the acceleration programs had an effect. In this sense, we also, for example, wanted to know whether acceleration programs try to react to the situation in terms of quickness. So trying to develop even faster, try to develop and launch a company directly to the market even faster than before. So this is, I would say, a part of these second questions. And I would also add another point, which is traditionally related to the concerns which arise during the crisis. I'm referring in particular to the issues of so-called credit crunch, so the difficulty in trying to attract investors. How a startup accelerator is affected with respect to the issue of other investors, subjects who want to invest, and in terms of involvement in this subject?
Yes, thank you for this question. I already anticipated something, and also I would say the openness with which both the startups, but also the acceleration team became fully digital and work completely on our platform, not downsizing the program, but actually making or developing a digital acceleration program. And again, the absence rate of the startups decreased via the digital platform. But of course, in the program, there are also other steps which are related not only to the program as such, but also to the relationship, for example, with investors, the networking events that we would usually have in our premises, or the roadshow that we do when we wanted to, I would say, market our program. Well, that was affected, but again, we try not to discourage ourselves and try to get into this new modality. But it's not enough that you one side gets in this new modality. Of course, you need also your counterpart. And what we have seen is that the roadshow, for example, to disseminate our program in view of the next call launch, was actually held digitally and was successful. I already mentioned the numbers of applications we had to record. But the networking instead events, in my view, were affected, meaning that I would say the connection between investors, mentors, and so on with the startups became more, I would say, a private relationship, more than an open networking opportunity. So the circulation of relationship, that's an interesting thing. Although on a digital open platform, and even if it was, of course, held with all the startups online and so on, the conversation became private. And you can say, okay, the conversation is private also when you meet in person, yes, but after that conversation in private, usually in a physical space, you go to another person and you open up another conversation. Instead, when you locked into a digital room for a conversation, it's difficult that you come back to, or you joined to another room. And I'm talking about the digital platform usability, which is not the usability actually, but it's the behavior of the people. So we're not accustomed yet to browse or to visit one digital room to the other, although we are very much accustomed to zap from one channel to the other. In terms of investors, instead, we are about to have now our investor day that will be held on the 24th of September. Well, we decided to have it in a mixed modality. So we'll have like a certain number of people on site in our premises, according and respecting, of course, the health requirements. And on the other side, we will have a streaming event that can be accessed by the people, of course, who required to access. So it will be a mixed event. It will be an interesting, I would say, experimentation, but coming to instead to the money. So how much money is around or was around or is made available? Well, I observed two kinds of, I would say, approaches. One is the prudential, hyper-conservative investor who says, well, but now there is COVID, now it's a pandemic, a post-pandemic, who knows who will come next? So let's be very careful, let's let's give them objectives and we will see. So the procrastinator. On the other side, at least for my exposure, there is the prudential, I would say the prudential risk taker. So the procrastinator is takes out and shares his, her conservative approach. That probably was already there, but now is even more visible. While the risk taker is not just a risk taker 100%, but is a prudential risk taker. In our selection, this kind of a profile would behave like saying, okay, if we do not invest now for something that may develop a change, an innovation, if we do not try it now, if we do not support now, then when? Okay, and of course, I support this kind of approach. In terms of, I would say, cash available, well, you cannot imagine. We made 4 deals during the summer break. So immediately after the COVID lift up of the lockdown, with lots of money flowing in. And I would say at a speed that was not the speed we were accustomed before the pandemic, meaning that the investors now, those who are convinced, invest immediately. The bureaucracy, I would say the diligence that usually run through lots of papers, piles of papers. Now it's done digitally, now it's quick, now it's either this way or that way. So the availability of cash is there. And now, of course, talking about impact investing is there, is growing, and that's the important thing for me. There are now investors, I would say traditional investors, that are little by little moving towards sustainable investing, if not either impact investing. And that is very encouraging, I would say.
Okay, thanks again. And I will come now to the last and third question, to the final question of this interview. Maybe it's the most difficult one in the sense that we would like also in a way to try to predict together in the future or what could be the possible scenarios for the near future at least. And we would like to start from what is happening at a more general level, in the sense that we are seeing a sort of reshaping, a rewidening of the public role intended as the government direct role into the economy, which of course comes from a wide series of different tools. And there are also, of course, a lot of monetary resources coming now from the European Union with the Next Generation EU program. So there are lots of people also talking about the potential for development of new industrial policies in a way, led by the public, but together with the partnership of private actors. So in this sense, what could be the role that the ecosystem of startups could play in the near future from this viewpoint? And again, if there are winners and losers in this situation, also in terms of sectors and types of activities, what these winners and losers would be, according to you?
Yes, it's a long and difficult question. Usually, if I'm asked to predict something, I stay very far from that. But I have also to say that I'm an optimist, so I see always sunshine in front of me, and I do not like to look backwards. So having said that, meaning that I will give you an optimistic answer, which is, however, based on the evidence and experience I'm trying to share. I think that the public intervention is now ready to be different versus what it used to be, especially if the European Union sticks to the approach that has been, I would say, implementing lately, meaning less bureaucracy, prompter response, a wider consultation, questions that were not asked before, co-design of solutions, because this is the way, well, then we have a good, I would say, outlook. And the money, of course, we have to be very realistic. Most of the money will probably spend in traditional ways, but I think there is quite a good confidence level that a big portion of that money could be actually dedicated to innovative, relevant solutions. And here I come back to the startups. If that portion of the money is really allocated to innovative, relevant solutions, then startups are at the center, because they are the actors. They are, I would say, the implementers of the solutions. So they are at the center not only of the, I would say, of the cash flow that can come, but also they should be put as one of the central pillars of the industrial policy. And this for two reasons. For this kind of money that is coming, that requires new skills, new ways, new entrepreneurial modalities and solutions, and is mainly, and that's one thing. And the other thing is that the economy needs new solutions, new models. So if we put together the finance, money, the goals that we want to reach in terms of integral sustainability, and on the other side, who can actually do that with a contemporary knowledge that also is able to look into the future and design now what could be by entrepreneurial solutions, well, this mix of three things is actually to be found in startups, and more than in startups, in impact startups, meaning those startups that place at the center of their intentional entrepreneurial activity this generation of social value and positive impact on society, and not just the new efficiency model of something that is already probably functioning quite well. I may sound quite obscure, but I'm saying that, of course, people and communities expect and want to work with relevant solutions for their well-being, and not and for sustainability as at large, and not just to improve the efficiency of a mechanical or technological response.
Okay, so we'll see in the future. That we can test the hypothesis that we put on the table now. We thank again Laura Orestano, CEO of Socialfare, for her availability today to have this meeting and conversation with us. And we'll see again on these same channels for our interviews relating to the relationship between economy and COVID-19. Thanks again, Laura.
Thank you. Good luck.